can't say enough. The way that they played, the way that they performed, they had pressure on Josh from the first snap to the last snap. Forced some turnovers there, gave us some short fields. Defense won the game today.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Bears Cast with myself, Ethan Cowgill, and my co-host, Andrew McCulloch. Andrew, how are you doing today?
I can't complain. It's Thanksgiving week, and in the spirit of Thanksgiving, I would just like to thank our viewers out there who listen to our podcast each week, and I'd also like to
thank every Wednesday. We broadcast right here from the campus at North Studio.
And I'd also like to thank two gentlemen. First, our professor of communications, Travis Yates, and secondly, my co-host, Ethan Cowgill, because without these two people, this would not be happening for you today.
Thank you, Andrew. I want to thank you as well. You've been a great contributor, a friend, a brother, a co-host, all those things. A great victim when we play Mario Golf. You're always getting beat up, and you always come back, and you're willing to take another beating from me. So I'm thankful for that as well.
I appreciate it.
All right. Well, let's kind of go over what happened. We're going to be talking to you for the next 30 minutes about the week that was for Chicago Bears football and the week that will be. Bears last week, they come off. They win their second game in a row. They beat Tampa Bay 21-13. Andrew, give me your initial impressions of this game.
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts for this game. One, I think the Bears owe you an apology for your prediction last week, 49-20. They didn't come close to that. They also owe me an apology for not even scoring the 27 points that I thought they would score. This game was, the score-wise, it turned out exactly like last week's. The Bears go down 10-0 in the first half. They come back and score 21 unanswered points. And then, Minnesota added a field goal. Tampa Bay adds a field goal. So it's kind of ironic.
A weak finish.
A little weird, I thought. And then also,
they scraped by two weak teams.
Yeah, and it's really concerning to me. In the last 6 games, the Bears have been outscored in the first quarter 41-0. The last 6 games the Bears have played, they have not scored in the first quarter. A little concerning, but all in all, happy to get the W.
Yeah, you have to be happy with the victory at the end of the day, even if it wasn't what you expected it to be. I looked at this game, and I'm just not happy with the performance. I think that Tampa Bay has the worst record in the NFC. They're not a very good team. And these are the types of games that you should dominate, and I didn't see that from the Bears.
Well, offensive production was much further down against Tampa Bay than it was against Minnesota. Last week we talked about how the Bears they were able to get over 400 yards of offense. Well, this week, they only accumulated for over 200, just barely over 200, just at 204, which is unacceptable against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're not a very good defensive football team. I don't care if Lovie Smith's the head coach, and the offense is underperformed, and ironically, without our defense, we probably wouldn't have won this game.
That's the story of this game, is that our defense picked it up. They did what they needed to do. I mean, against Josh McCown, albeit, but still.
But still, it's nice to see our defense get pressure on the quarterback and create turnovers again.
And we'll see the verdict. Matt Forte, it's funny, when he started getting more carries, that's when we started scoring more points. And I hope Mark Trestman will learn that, but it seems like we've waited a year and a half for him to realize that, and he hasn't gotten the message yet.
You're right. It's nice to see that Forte with 23 carries, and you compare that to Jay Cutler's 27 attempts. It's a nice balanced attack, and we need more of that in order to win games.
I don't think it's ever a good sign if Jay Cutler's throwing it more than 35 times a game.
Absolutely not. And there have been times this year where he's been throwing it over 40 times. Oh. That's how dependent Mark Trestman is on Jay Cutler, and obviously to a fault. That's why we're 5-6. I mean, not all Jay Cutler, but it's a big reason why our offense isn't performing the way it did last year.
Yeah, too many screen plays, not enough. I don't see enough slants out of this offense either, out of the passing. I like to see more slants because that's what I think Brandon Marshall is excellent at that, and that's what really gets him involved. But nonetheless, it's a 21-13 victory. The Bears, they move on to 5-6, so they're starting to put together some victories. Let's kind of take a look here at the division for the NFC North, how it stands this week. Green Bay, they finally claimed the top spot after being in a dead heat with Detroit. They're 8-3. Detroit, they've lost their last 2 games. They lost to New England this past week, 34-9. Green Bay beat Minnesota 24-21 in the division. And speaking of Minnesota, they now take sole ownership of last place at 4-7. How do you feel about how the division is shaping up this week?
Well, it's exactly how I predicted it to shape out. The only surprise that I have, though, is that Minnesota they kept up with Green Bay, and for a while there I thought they potentially had a chance to win the game. That is until Green Bay went up 24-14 late in the fourth, and, Minnesota added a touchdown, but it was over. Detroit losing 34-9. It is a little surprising that they lost by that much, but I knew going into Foxborough there was not much of a chance that I saw for Detroit to win the game. And now that's 2 losses for them. Are they going to be able to bounce back, or are they just going to keep falling like they usually do late in the year?
And for Green Bay, getting to Detroit here in a second, Green Bay, they're going to go into Foxborough. They're going to take on New England this week in place of the Lions, who weren't able to get the win last week. So Green Bay is going to try to reverse that fortune for the NFC North in Foxborough. Because New England, they've beaten Chicago at Gillette Stadium. They've beaten Detroit, so they're 2-0 at home against the NFC North this year. Minnesota, they're going to travel to Carolina and face Cam Newton and the Panthers. And then the game that's on this week that we're starring right now, Detroit at Chicago, Thanksgiving Day. I'm excited for this game. It's been a while since I've been excited for a game, but Thanksgiving Day, turkey, pumpkin pie, Jay Cutler, Matt Forte. Let's hope there's no Jay Cutler interceptions. But I'm ready to feast. I think the Bears. I think this could be a good win if they can beat down on the Detroit Lions.
You're going to call me crazy for this, but if we somehow find a way to win this game and get to 6-6, I won't count out possibly making the playoffs or at least salvaging a good season.
They have to win out to even be.
They do, but if you look at the schedule, we play New Orleans, and
underperformed this year.
Exactly, and normally when you look at a team like New Orleans, you have Drew Brees, but who else do you have?
Yeah,
that's it. Their star wideout this year, Brandon Cooks, is out for the year. He hurt himself, and I'm not really sure if I could see New Orleans beating us, whether it is in New Orleans or whether it's in Chicago. And next, the Cowboys come to town to play a Thursday night game soon. Mm-hmm. And the Bears have had the Cowboys number lately. I know the Cowboys are pretty good this year. And then, obviously, we still have one matchup with Minnesota and one matchup with Detroit. Can we win out? Probably not. But when your team has momentum like this, if we can find a way to win on Thursday, Thanksgiving Day, nothing's out of the question.
Yeah, I think that they can beat Detroit, and they can win out against Minnesota. But the Saints game and the Cowboys game would be the games that would concern me, because even with the Saints underperforming, they still give a lot of matchup problems to the Bears over the years. And like the Bears have had the Cowboys number, the Saints have had the Bears numbers over the past few years.
You're right.
So winning out, I don't think that's a possibility. But, obviously it would be nice.
So would you be more inclined to say 9-7, 8-8?
I'm thinking 8-8 this year.
Yeah. I was thinking more realistically that as well. I'm trying to be positive with this, try not to be as pessimistic as I usually am about the Bears.
The worst I see them.
It's hard to see us going 9-7 or 10-6. 8-8 sounds pretty realistic to me.
Yeah, 8-8. I think the worst that we'll do is 6-10. I don't think we'll go. I think we'll get at least one more win, at the very least, against Minnesota. There's no way we would lose to Minnesota.
I agree. That's as bad as it's going to get.
Yeah. Well, let's hope it doesn't get that bad. Let's hope that the Bears can win out these final few games. But let's focus here on Detroit this week, because Detroit, they pose an interesting matchup problem, because offensively they've underperformed a little bit, scoring 9 points last week against New England. They're averaging about 18 points a game. That's 28th in the NFL. But defensively, they've been outstanding in almost every facet. Points per game allowed, they're first at 17.3. Passing yards, 233 a game. That's good for 10th. Rushing yards, they've got the best rushing defense in the NFL at 70 yards a game. So all their defensive facets are very strong. And if Calvin Johnson and Matthew Stafford can make a few plays, that can really open up the game.
Exactly. I see this actually probably being more of a lower scoring game than most people might, because you see guys you look at both teams' rosters and you see guys like Stafford and Calvin Johnson. You see the Reggie Bushes in the world if he plays. We don't know if he's going to play or not. And then you look at the Bears, you see the Jay Cutlers. Yes, he can throw interceptions, but he can also be explosive on the offensive side. You've got Alshon Jeffrey. You've got Brandon Marshall. You've got the resurgence now of a Marquise Wilson to add in the slot. I know he only had one reception last week, but he's another big body to add there in our wide receiver core.
He looks like he's the guy who'll get more involved as the season goes on.
Right. He's just now getting accumulated with the offense. And then you still have Matt Forte. I know Detroit is first in against the rush, or defending against the rush, and they're also first in the amount of points they give up. Only 17 points a game, which is pretty good. And
yep.
That's why I see this game being low scoring.
Yeah. And if you looked at this game coming into the season, you would think Chicago and Detroit, you think that those two offenses would be explosive and the defenses would be kind of middling, but it's the inverse.
Coming into this season, I would have probably looked at this matchup more of a 31-28 or a 35-31 kind of game, but now I'm looking more so at the 21-17 or 24-21 kind of range.
Yeah, that's exactly how I see it going right now. And if you look at Matthew Stafford, he's having a really kind of a weak year so far. He's got less than 3,000 yards passing, just under that, under 60% completion percentage, 13 touchdowns to 10 interceptions, which aren't great numbers for a guy who's a number one overall pick and a guy you want to lead your franchise. I mean, he's a guy that's supposed to be your Tom Brady, so to speak.
They're pretty subpar, and to give him a little bit of a slack here, he was playing without his number one, Calvin Johnson, for a few games, and he's got two pretty good backs in Joique Bell and Reggie Bush who can carry the load, and maybe they haven't put up stellar numbers, but they're two backs that can kind of take pressure off of Matt Stafford. He doesn't have to do it all. That's why we don't really see Matt Stafford the gunslinger that we've seen in the past, because now he's actually got a running game that can pick up the slack a little bit and help him out when it counts. And also, when his defense is performing as well as it is, it also takes a lot of pressure off of him. He doesn't have to put a lot of points on the board.
Yeah, and Golden Tate, been a big surprise for Detroit, 72 receptions.
Yeah, great acquisition.
Over 1,000 yards receiving. And Calvin Johnson, fantasy owners lamenting using their first-round picks on him because, as you said, injury problems have plagued him this year. Only 38 receptions, 578 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So he'll obviously pick those numbers up as the season goes on. But, that's definitely been some of their problems with on the offensive side of the ball.
And Megatron is going to find his way to get his own. He's the best wide receiver in the game. The guy's a freak of nature athletically. He is going to impose his will against our corners. It's really just kind of about containing him. That's what the Bears have been able to do when we've played Detroit. Detroit and Chicago, they've been kind of back and forth. You'd see the Bears win at home, and then you'd see Detroit win at Ford Field in Detroit. But I see this kind of playing to be a close game, like most Chicago-Detroit games are, and I could see it even getting a little chippy because these two teams don't really like each other.
Absolutely. Detroit and Chicago, no love lost between these two teams. I remember the game where who was the defensive back that was thrown out of the game? Do you recall? Because there was a big brawl after Matthew Stafford got knocked out or was clobbered. But it was a couple of years ago, around Thanksgiving time. That was a game that the Bears killed the Lions, and I remember after losing the first game of Monday night. Opening the season?
It's a good question.
But, again, as you said, the chippy battles between the teams. Or one of my favorite games of the past few years with the Bears was that 13-10 victory that they had on Monday Night Football where Charles Tillman shut down Calvin Johnson. That was the whole story of the game, and that was a great battle, too. So that might, that's the kind of game that I would see, a 13-10 type of matchup possibly.
And mentioning Charles Tillman, we're going to miss him desperately against Calvin Johnson because he's played him phenomenally over his career. And it'll be interesting to see if Kyle Fuller will be able to go. If not, it'll be up to our guy Tim Jennings to, at least contain Calvin Johnson.
I think those guys. I think Kyle Fuller has struggled a little bit the past few games.
Lately, he has. He had a really, really good first about 4 games. Then he broke his hand, and he's kind of struggled since then. He hasn't been able to find his way. But
he's facing a lot of new receivers, a lot of new offenses, so that's just part of adjusting to the NFL. I mean, he gave up that big touchdown reception against Tampa Bay where the guy just absolutely torched him. So hopefully he'll cut down on that. But, yeah, Calvin Johnson, I can see matchup problems because he's got a big height. Calvin Johnson has a big height advantage over Fuller and Jennings, whoever they put him on. Right.
There's actually another rookie that Kyle Fuller gave up a touchdown to, Mike Evans, the rookie receiver out of Texas A&M. But you're right. And, it comes with it's just rookie pains, It's growing pains. Stuff happens. You have to learn from your mistakes as a rookie. You just have to grow. And Kyle Fuller will do that. He'll be all right.
Yeah. But the Bears have struggled against high-profile wide receivers in the past. A.J. Green, he torched us in the opening game 2 years ago. But we still won that game, but still. So our coverage can be definitely susceptible to some of these elite wide receivers in the NFL.
That's exactly right.
Why don't you go ahead on this Thanksgiving Day, on this Thanksgiving edition of the Bears Cast, give me your prediction, give me a score. How's this game going to turn out for Chicago?
I'm going to be positive here. I'm going to pick the Chicago Bears to win this game 20-17 because I think that the Bears' defensive line, we had a great game against Tampa Bay, and I'm looking for us to build on that and get pressure on Matt Stafford and kind of just get him off of his rhythm. I'm also looking for the Bears' offense to limit their mistakes and get the ball into good field position and get Robbie Gould going. He's kind of been a little off this year. I mean, he missed a field goal last week against Tampa Bay, but we got to get Robbie Gould going. We got to get the ball in good field position, and I think we can do that against Detroit. I know Detroit is 7-4, but they've lost 2 games in a row. They're kind of looking for another lane for success after getting dominated by New England, and I think right now they're vulnerable enough to where the Bears can pounce.
All right.
Steal a victory.
So what was your final again?
20-17 Bears.
20-17. Well, Thursday games, those are always kind of a toss-up because as we've seen this past year, there's been a lot of blowouts, a lot of mismatches, a lot of whatever the reason is.
It's just a lack of preparation for both teams, not being able to get the whole full week's preparation in.
So, it's a short week for both these teams on Thanksgiving, and I've kind of gone back and forth on this one, and I'm going to go low scoring. I'm going to go 17-10, and I'm going to take Chicago. I think Chicago can pull this one out. I think they're building momentum. They're teams that are kind of going in opposite directions right now. Detroit's on the downhill spiral. They've lost their past 2. Chicago's going upward. They've won their past 2. And I think that the Bears are motivated. I think they're motivated to win. I think that they're going to get better because they're definitely more capable than what they've shown even in their past 2 victories. So 17-10 is how I'm going to see this one playing out. I think Chicago gets themselves to 500, 6-6 on the year, and Detroit was going to fall to 7-5, and hopefully they make some more headways, and maybe Green Bay can lose a game or 2, and Chicago can get back in the NFC North race.
Yeah, hopefully Green Bay loses against New England, and folks, you heard it here first. Ethan and I predicted the Bears to get back to 500, send out a little positive vibe for the Thanksgiving week. Thank you for joining us. This has been the Bears Cast, broadcasting live from QU's North Campus studio. I am Andrew McCulloch, and for my co-host Ethan Cowgill, we would like to wish you a happy Thanksgiving. Please leave comments under our video for this week. Tell us what you think the Bears need to do to win the game. Tell us what you think they need to do to make the playoffs, and just give us your thoughts in general. And Ethan, would you like to say anything before we sign off?
Bear down.